My son emptied every account I owned, drove me 5 hours into mountains, and locked me in a cabin with no heat, telling everyone I was on vacation, while he spent my life savings on his wedding 2 states away. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I did. I sat with it for 3 days, wrapped in a moving blanket, watching my own breath turn to fog in the air. But before I tell you what happened in that cabin, and what I did when I finally got out, I need you to do something for me. Tell me where you're watching this from, and what time it is right there. Type it in the comments. I read every single one. And if stories like this move you, stories about betrayal, about a mother's love getting tested past its limit, then hit that subscribe button right now, tap the like button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because trust me, this story is not what you think it is. My name is Linda Carver. I am 61 years old. And for most of my life, I built things with my own 2 hands. I grew up in Chicago, in a small apartment above a laundromat, where the smell of soap and steam followed me to school every single day. My mother cleaned houses. My father drove a delivery truck until his back gave out. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and my mother always told me one thing. She said, "Linda, nobody is coming to save you, so you better learn how to save yourself." I never forgot that. I worked 3 jobs through community college. I sold sandwiches at lunch. I cleaned offices at night. And slowly, piece by piece, I built a small property business. I bought one rundown building in Chicago when I was 26 years old, fixed it up with my own hands, and rented it out. Then I bought another, then another. By the time I was 40, I had a real estate company worth millions of dollars, apartment buildings, shopping plazas, land in Texas and Florida. I did it all without a husband, because my husband left when our son was only 4 years old. He said he wasn't ready to be tied down. He said a lot of things. Then he was gone, and it was just me and my baby boy, Daniel. Daniel was my whole world. I worked myself half to death, so he could have things I never had. Private school, nice clothes, a car on his 16th birthday. I told myself every single time I missed one of his school plays, every time I fell asleep at my desk instead of tucking him in, that I was doing it for him, that the money, the buildings, the empire I was building, all of it was for Daniel. I never once thought that the same son I raised with my bare hands would one day leave me to freeze to death in a cabin in the mountains. But that is exactly what happened. Let me back up. Daniel is 29 years old now. Handsome, charming. The kind of young man who can walk into any room and make people like him within 5 minutes. He never had to work as hard as I did. I made sure of that. Maybe that was my first mistake. He went to college in California, studied business, and came back saying he wanted to help run my company. I was so proud. I brought him in slowly, taught him everything, showed him every contract, every deal, every account. I trusted him with access to almost everything because he was my son, my blood, my boy. About a year ago, Daniel met a woman named Vanessa at some fancy party in Los Angeles. She was beautiful, sharp-tongued, always dressed like she stepped out of a magazine. From the moment I met her, something in my stomach twisted. Call it a mother's instinct. Call it 30 years of reading people in business deals. But something about her smile never reached her eyes. Still, I said nothing, because Daniel was happy, and after everything I had sacrificed, all I wanted was for my son to be happy. They got engaged after only 4 months. Fast, but I told myself love doesn't follow a schedule. Then Vanessa started talking about the wedding. Not just any wedding. A luxury mountain wedding in Colorado, at some private estate that cost more per night than most people make in a year. Ice sculptures, a live orchestra, designer gowns flown in from Europe, the kind of wedding you see in magazines, not real life. I remember sitting at dinner with them, listening to the numbers, and my chest went tight. Daniel, I said gently, this is a beautiful dream, but it is a very expensive dream. He smiled at me the way he used to when he was 7 years old and wanted a new bike. Mom, he said, you always taught me to dream big. This is our chance to start our marriage the right way. Please, I need this. I need you. I need you. Those 3 words undid me every single time, because I spent his whole childhood absent, working, building an empire instead of being present. So when my grown son looked at me and said he needed me, some old guilt inside me lit up like a furnace. And I said yes. I told myself I was helping my son start his life. I told myself this was what all that hard work had been for. I had no idea I was signing away everything. Over the following weeks, Daniel started asking me to move things around. Small requests at first. Can you add me as a co-signer on this account, Mom, just so I can help pay vendors faster? Can you transfer this amount here so the deposit doesn't bounce? Can you give me access to the property fund just temporarily, just for wedding logistics? I want you to understand something. I am not a foolish woman. I have negotiated multi-million-dollar deals with grown men trying to swindle me in boardrooms, and I have won. But there's something different about your own child asking you for help. There's a voice inside you that says, this is not a stranger. This is the boy you raised. Trust him. So I did, piece by piece, account by account. I gave my son access to almost everything I had built over 35 years. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel called me with a strange offer. Mom, he said, his voice syrupy sweet. I know the last few months have been stressful for you with the wedding planning and the business. Why don't you take a break? I found this beautiful little cabin up in Connecticut, quiet, peaceful, surrounded by snow and pine trees. Just you, some time to relax before the big day. I already booked it. Consider it a gift. Looking back now, I can see every warning sign flashing red like sirens. But at the time, exhausted, emotionally worn thin, aching for some form of appreciation for my only child, I said yes. I packed a small bag. I did not bring my laptop, because Daniel said the cabin location was, quote, a dead zone for work stuff. Mom, just relax. I did not bring extra chargers. I did not tell my lawyer or my assistant exactly where I was going, because Daniel said he already arranged everything, and I trusted him completely. A driver picked me up, not someone I recognized. Someone Daniel said he hired special for the trip. We drove for almost 5 hours, deep into the mountains, past towns, past gas stations, until there was nothing around us but snow and trees and silence. The cabin looked charming from the outside. Wooden walls, a small chimney, snow piled on the roof like powdered sugar. The driver helped me inside, told me the caretaker would arrive the next morning to bring supplies. And then he left. I did not think anything of it that first night. I made tea from the small kitchen. I sat by the window and watched snowfall in the moonlight, and for the first time in months, I let myself breathe. Then the next morning came. No caretaker. Then the next day. Still nothing. By the third morning, I realized the heater had run out of fuel. The small stack of firewood by the fireplace was gone. My phone, which had been struggling on 1-bar signal, finally died completely, and there was no charger that fitted anywhere in that cabin. I remember standing in the kitchen. My breath turned to fog in front of my face, and a cold feeling that had nothing to do with the temperature crawled up my spine. Something was wrong. I searched every drawer in that cabin, looking for anything, a landline, a note, a name. In the back of a kitchen drawer, buried under old dish towels, I found a folded piece of paper. It was a printed receipt. Cabin rental, 1 week, paid in full, and the payment account listed was my own business account, the one Daniel had access to. My hand started shaking, and it was not from the cold. I want you to imagine this feeling. Imagine realizing slowly, in a freezing cabin in the middle of nowhere, that your own son planned this. Not a mistake, not bad luck, a plan. I searched further and found something worse. Bank statements he must have printed and forgotten to hide properly, showing transfers, big ones, moving out of my company accounts and into new accounts I did not recognize. Amounts that made my stomach drop. 6 figures. Then 7. Millions of dollars. Slowly bled out of the empire I built with my bare hands since I was 26 years old. My son was not sending me to relax before his wedding. My son was stealing everything I owned and hiding me somewhere cold and forgotten, so I would not notice until it was too late. I sat on that freezing cabin floor, and I cried. Not the soft, pretty crying you see in movies. ugly, ragged sobs that shook my whole body, because the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, had planned this. Not a stranger, not a business rival, my own son. But something happened after that first wave of grief passed. Something my mother's voice, all those years ago in that little Chicago apartment, whispered back into my memory. Nobody is coming to save you, Linda, so you better learn how to save yourself. I wiped my face. I stood up, and something inside me, some old fire that built an empire from nothing, lit back up. I was not going to sit in that cabin and die quietly. I was not going to let my son write the end of my story. I searched every inch of that cabin again, this time not out of despair, but out of purpose. In an old wooden chest near the fireplace, I found something that made my heart jump. An emergency radio, the kind hikers use, dusty, forgotten by whoever owned this place before it became a rental. My hands were so cold I could barely press the buttons, but I got it working. Static at first. Then, after almost an hour of adjusting the antenna, a voice, a park ranger, doing routine radio checks in that region. I do not remember exactly what I said. I only remember my voice cracking as I gave my location, the cabin's name, anything I could describe from memory. 4 hours later, a rescue truck pulled up outside that cabin, and I have never in my life been so happy to see a stranger's face. They wrapped me in blankets, gave me hot coffee, asked if I wanted to go to a hospital. I said no. I asked for one thing only, a phone. I called my lawyer first, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Carol, who had worked with me for over 15 years. I told her everything, the cabin, the receipt, the transfers. Carol went quiet on the phone for a long moment, and then she said the words that changed everything. Linda, she said, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Where is Daniel right now? I did not know, but I had a terrible feeling. The wedding, the luxury mountain wedding in Colorado, paid for with my stolen millions, was happening in 5 days, and Daniel had no idea I was alive, awake, and coming for every single thing he tried to steal. Carol went to work immediately. In less than 24 hours, she had frozen every account Daniel had access to, using emergency legal authority I had given her years ago for exactly this kind of situation, though I never imagined I would need it against my own son. She traced every transfer he made. She found the wedding venue in Colorado, the vendors, the guest list, all paid for through accounts linked back to money stolen from me. I did not go to the police yet, not because I wanted to protect Daniel, because I wanted him to feel, just once in his life, what it was like to have the ground disappear beneath his feet, the way he made it disappear beneath mine. I flew, with Carol by my side, to Colorado. 5 days after I nearly froze to death in a cabin my own son sent me to, I stood at the edge of a luxury mountain estate, watching string lights glow between the pine trees, watching a small orchestra warm up their instruments, watching waiters carry trays of champagne to a crowd of Daniel's friends, people I had helped pay for through years of birthday gifts, tuition, favors, and yes, stolen wedding money. I was wearing a plain black coat. My hair was still messy from days, without proper care. I looked nothing like the polished businesswoman most of these guests probably expected the mother of the groom to look like. But I had never felt more powerful in my life. Daniel stood near the altar, laughing with his groomsmen, glowing with the kind of happiness that only comes from believing you got away with something. Vanessa stood nearby in a dress that probably cost more than most people's yearly salary, adjusting her veil, smiling at her reflection in a small hand mirror. Neither of them saw me yet. I want you to imagine this moment with me. The mountain air was sharp and cold, but nothing compared to what I had already survived. String lights glowed gold against the darkening sky. Somewhere, a violin began to play, and I stood there, a woman who built an empire from nothing, who nearly died in a cabin because of her own child, watching him prepare to marry into more stolen luxury. Carol touched my arm gently. Are you ready? She asked. I nodded. We walked forward, past confused guests who did not recognize the woman in the plain black coat, past the wedding planner who tried to stop us at the edge of the ceremony space, until we were close enough that Daniel finally turned and saw me. I watched the color drain from his face in real time. Mom, he said, his voice cracking, you're supposed to be... He stopped himself. But it was too late, because in that single unfinished sentence, in front of nearly 100 guests, in front of Vanessa, in front of everyone, my son had just confirmed exactly what I already knew. He knew where I was supposed to be. He knew what was supposed to happen to me in that cabin. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's face twisted from confusion into something sharper, something calculating, like she was already trying to figure out how to save herself from whatever was coming. I stepped forward, and I want you to know, my voice did not shake. Not even a little. "Hello, Daniel," I said. "I'm so sorry I'm a little late. I was stuck somewhere cold for a few days. You remember, the cabin you sent me to, without heat, without firewood, without a working phone." The silence that followed was the loudest silence I have ever heard in my life. "Mom, please," Daniel started, stepping toward me, his hands raised like he was trying to calm down a wild animal instead of speak to his own mother. "Let me explain. It's not what it looks like." I raised one hand, and to my surprise, he actually stopped talking. Maybe some part of him still remembered who taught him how to negotiate, who taught him that silence is often more powerful than shouting. "I'm going to give you the same courtesy you gave me," I said, loud enough for every guest to hear. "I'm going to let everyone here understand exactly what is happening, calmly, clearly, without hysterics." I turned to Carol, and she stepped forward with a small folder in her hands, the kind of quiet, devastating prop that instantly told every business person in that crowd this was serious. "This wedding," I said, "this entire event, the venue, the flowers, the orchestra, the dress Vanessa is wearing right now, all was paid for using money stolen from my accounts. Money I built over 35 years, starting from nothing, in a small apartment above a laundromat in Chicago." Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. "3 days ago," I continued, "my son arranged for me to be sent to an isolated cabin in Connecticut, with no heat, no working phone, and no way to contact anyone, while he continued transferring millions of dollars out of my company accounts to pay for this celebration." Gasps, whispers. Someone in the back actually dropped a champagne glass, and the sound of it shattering against the stone floor felt like punctuation to my sentence. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I simply told the truth, clearly, calmly, in front of every single person Daniel wanted to impress with money that was never his to spend. Daniel's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. "Mom," he finally said, his voice desperate now, "please, not here, not like this." "You didn't think about like this," I said, "when you left me in that cabin." Vanessa turned to Daniel, her voice sharp and cold, completely different from the sweet tone she used around me before. "You told me this was your money. You told me your mother approved everything." I did not smile, though some small, bitter part of me wanted to, because in that single sentence, Vanessa revealed something I suspected all along. She was not just an innocent bride. She knew about the stolen money. Maybe not every detail, but enough. I turned back to the crowd of stunned guests, people Daniel grew up with, people whose weddings, whose vacations, whose lifestyles I had unknowingly helped fund for years through my son's generosity with my own money. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's night out of spite," I said. "I'm here because a mother should not have to almost freeze to death in the mountains while her son spends her life savings on champagne towers." Then I turned to Carol and gave a small nod. Carol stepped forward and, calmly, professionally, announced that as of that morning, every account connected to funding this event had been legally frozen pending an investigation. The venue, she explained, had already been notified. The vendors already contacted. This wedding, whatever was left of it, was not going to be paid for with stolen money one moment longer. The reaction was instant. The wedding planner, who had been standing nervously near the altar, immediately pulled out her phone. Vendors began quietly packing away decorations. A few guests, sensing the disaster unfolding, started slipping away toward the parking area. Daniel stood frozen, watching his entire fantasy wedding collapse in real time, the same way he had once watched me build an entire company from nothing. Except this time, instead of pride, all that showed on his face was panic. He turned to me one last time, his voice breaking. "Mom, please, I can explain everything. I never meant for you to actually get hurt in that cabin. I just needed time. I needed the wedding to happen before you found out I was going to pay you back." I looked at my son, This boy I carried, raised, sacrificed everything for, and I felt something strange settle inside my chest. Not rage, not even sadness anymore. Something quieter, something final. Daniel, I said softly, you didn't need time. You needed me gone long enough to steal everything I built and marry into it, like it was yours. You didn't almost forget to bring me firewood. You planned every single detail, the same way I taught you to plan every business deal. His eyes filled with tears, but I had learned something important in that freezing cabin. Tears do not always mean truth. Sometimes they simply mean someone finally got caught. I will not go into every legal detail here, because honestly, some of it is still unfolding even now. But I will tell you this. Every dollar Daniel stole is being traced, recovered, and returned piece by piece through the same legal system I used for 35 years to protect everything I built. Vanessa, it turns out, had her own history of similar situations with wealthy families, which came out during the investigation. Though I will let you imagine the details rather than spell them all out. The wedding never happened that night. Instead, under those same beautiful string lights, surrounded by half-packed decorations and stunned, whispering guests, I stood as a different kind of symbol. Not the mother who forgives everything silently. Not the woman who lets herself be frozen out, literally or emotionally, from her own life's work. I stood there as proof that some mistakes, even the ones made by our own children, our own blood, cannot simply be smoothed over with tears and pretty words. I flew back to Chicago 3 days later. The city looked different somehow, sharper, colder, but also more honest than that fake Golden Mountain light had been. I moved back into my old apartment for a while, the very same building where I once lived above a laundromat as a little girl. I bought that whole building years ago, renovated the top floor into something comfortable, kept it as a quiet retreat whenever I needed to remember where I came from. I needed that reminder more than ever now. I sat by the window one evening, wrapped in a warm blanket, drinking tea that did not taste like survival this time, just tea, and I thought about everything that led me here. I thought about my mother's voice. Nobody is coming to save you, Linda, so you better learn how to save yourself. She was right about that, more right than she ever could have imagined, because in the end, it was not a rescue team, not a lawyer, not even my own son, who saved me from that cabin. It was the same fire that built an empire from nothing decades ago. The same fire that refused to stay frozen, refused to stay quiet, refused to disappear just because someone I loved decided my life was worth less than his comfort. Daniel still calls sometimes. I do not always answer. When I do, the conversations are short, careful, full of long silences neither of us knows how to fill anymore. I do not know what our relationship will look like in 5 years, or even 5 months. Some wounds, especially the ones carved by your own child, take a very long time to heal, if they heal at all. But I know this. I am still standing. My company is still mine. Every dollar he tried to steal is being clawed back through careful, patient legal work. And somewhere along the way, in a freezing cabin in the mountains, I found something I did not know I had lost. Myself. Not the mother who sacrifices everything silently. Not the woman who gives, and gives until there is nothing left to steal. The woman who built an empire from a laundromat apartment. The woman who taught herself, decades ago, that nobody is coming to save you. So you better learn how to save yourself. I did. And if you are watching this right now, sitting somewhere far from me, maybe deal with your own kind of freezing cabin, your own kind of betrayal from someone you trusted with your whole heart. I want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to love someone with everything you have, and still protect yourself when they try to take everything from you. You are allowed to forgive someday on your own timeline without pretending the pain never happened. And most importantly, you are allowed to walk out that cold, dark place, whatever it looks like in your own life, and build something warm again, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, breath by breath, exactly like I did. If this story moved you even a little, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this one, and share it with someone who needs to hear that they can survive their own freezing cabin too. Tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Daniel that night on the mountain, or would you have walked away exactly like I did? I will be reading every single comment. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. Thank you for letting me tell it. And remember, no matter how cold things get, no matter who leaves in the dark, you always have the power to find your way back into the light.